when provider functions are the right tool. A common failure starts when a value is valid in Terraform syntax, but not the exact format an AWS API expects. Built-in functions can split, trim, or replace strings, but they do not encode provider-specific rules. Provider-defined functions exist for cases where the provider already knows the target service format and can transform data without creating or reading infrastructure. Terraform supports provider-defined functions in version 1.8 and later. A provider function is the right tool when the transformation depends on provider-owned semantics rather than general string manipulation. The AWS provider function trim IAM-row path removes the path portion from an IAM-row ARN because some AWS services require a row ARN without that path segment. Using the provider function keeps the rule attached to the AWS provider instead of re-implementing ARN parsing with fragile string operations in your module. Because provider-defined functions are intended to be offline and side effect free, Terraform can evaluate them as expression logic rather than as infrastructure operations. AWS IAM row creates a real IAM row in AWS. So Terraform sends a create request to the AWS API and records the row address and return attributes in state. Trim IAM row path does not create, modify, or read infrastructure. Terraform evaluates that function locally during expression processing and stores the resulting output value in state when outputs are recorded. This keeps the infrastructure object unchanged while normalizing the value that downstream configuration will consume. On the Navy submarine, the dangerous moment is often not the system itself, but the handoff between systems. A reading can be correct in one console and still be unstable at the next boundary if the receiving system expects a stricter format. Provider functions belong at that same boundary. They convert a provider-owned value into the format another provider-owned operation expects, which reduces the chance that a hand-built string rule drifts away from real service behavior. Provider functions are not a replacement for built-in Terraform functions. Use built-in functions when the rule is generic, such as merging maps, joining strings, or selecting values. Use a provider function when the rule is specific to provider behavior, provider formatting, or service compatibility inside that provider's domain. If you solve a provider-specific formatting problem with generic string surgery, you move correctness from provider logic into hand-maintained module logic.